June 5th, 2020, 5 in the morning. A call comes into the emergency dispatch center in Hanahan, South Carolina. The man on the line is 37-year-old Matthew Speck. His voice is shaking. His breathing is heavy. He tells the dispatcher that two men broke into his house while he and his wife were sleeping. He says they attacked him. He says he is hurt. When police cars pull up to the Eagle Landing neighborhood, it is still dark. Officers walk the perimeter of the house. The front door is locked. Every window is unbroken. Every screen is intact. There is no sign that anyone forced their way inside. They go in. The downstairs rooms look normal, nothing tossed, nothing broken. They climb to the second floor. Inside one of the bedrooms, they find 33-year-old Caitlyn Speck lying on the bed. She is not moving. At the foot of the bed, on the rug she always slept on, is the family golden Labrador, Bailey May. She is gone too. Matthew is standing outside with blood on his clothes. There are cuts on his arms and stomach. He tells detectives he got those wounds fighting off the intruders, who ran away just before the sirens arrived. But as investigators walk through the house, they keep noticing things that do not match that story. Caitlyn's wallet is sitting on a table near the front door. Cash and cards still inside. The laptops are where they were left. Not a single drawer was opened. Not one closet was searched. The house looks like nobody broke in at all. It looks like nobody was ever looking for anything. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to 2008. That is when Caitlyn Conran met Matthew Speck at a community event. Caitlyn, born August 18th, 1986. Was a designer who worked from home. She spent most of her days inside the two-story house in Eagle Landing, doing her work and spending time with Bailey May, the golden lab she treated as a full member of the family. People who knew the couple said their life looked stable. They owned property together and put money into home improvements. Caitlyn was in the middle of a home renovation. Building materials were stacked in the garage. She told friends how much she loved the quiet neighborhood, but people close to Caitlyn started noticing a change in Matthew in the final years of the marriage. She told her inner circle that he had become cold and distant. Still, she kept investing in the house and the life they had built. She had not contacted any lawyers. Everything around her pointed to someone planning a future in that home. What she did not know was that Matthew had already started planning a very different kind of future. Forensic teams went through the Eagle Landing house inch by inch. Their first job was to figure out how the alleged intruders got in and got out. They could not find an answer because based on the physical evidence, no one had come in from the outside. The front door had a deadbolt and an interior latch. Both were locked when officers arrived. All the windows upstairs and downstairs were unbroken. The frames were sealed. The screens had no cuts or pressure marks. There was no dirt on the floors, no footprints in the hallways, no signs of anyone moving through the house in a hurry. Matthew claimed two men had forced their way into the bedroom, fired shots, wounded him, and then escaped. But for that to be true, yes, those men would have had to lock the deadbolt and the interior latch from the inside on their way out. That is not possible unless you have a key and can reach back through a sealed door. No lockpicks, no spare keys, no exit path. When the shots were fired, the only living beings inside that house were Caitlyn, Matthew, and the dog. At the hospital, doctors looked at Matthew's injuries. He said he got them fighting armed intruders. Forensic specialists said something different. The cuts on his arms and stomach were shallow. The edges were smooth and clean. That is not what you see when someone is fighting off a person with a knife. Those injuries leave torn, ragged edges. They leave deep gashes on the hands and palms where someone tries to grab a blade or cover their face. Matthew had none of that. No defensive wounds. Just neat. That shallow cuts placed in areas a person can easily reach on themselves. The blood on his clothing also told a story. The pattern was controlled. In a real fight with movement and struggle, blood sprays in multiple directions. It smears. It spreads in chaotic patterns. What was on Matthew's clothes looked like someone had been standing still. Medical reports confirmed that none of his wounds were life-threatening. None needed surgery. They were precise, almost careful incisions. Detectives also noticed that Matthew's story kept shifting during questioning. The height of the intruders changed. Their clothing changed. The only constant was how much Matthew talked about his own pain. Bailey May was the family's golden Labrador. Her death became one of the most important pieces of the investigation. Its ballistics confirmed she was shot with the same weapon used on Caitlyn. The angle of the bullet showed it was fired at close range. Bailey May was lying in her usual spot by the bed. She had not tried to run. She never reacted because she did not see a threat coming. Neighbors later told investigators that Bailey May always barked at strangers. If someone unfamiliar came near the gate or stepped into the hallway, she would make noise. But that morning, not a single neighbor heard barking before the gunshots, only the shots. That meant whoever walked through that house and entered that bedroom was someone Bailey May recognized, someone she trusted. Investigators asked why robbers looking for valuables would use a bullet on a dog that was lying quietly on a rug. The answer had nothing to do with robbery. And Bailey May was shot because she could have made noise and broken the scene Matthew was building. Even in death, she pointed investigators toward the person who had been in that house all along. Tech experts pulled data from Matthew's phone and computer, both taken from the Eagle Landing home. What they found became one of the strongest parts of the prosecution's case. In the days before the shooting, Matthew's browser history showed dozens of visits to pages about toxicology and methods for staging crime scenes. He was not skimming. He spent hours on forums reading detailed discussions. His phone also had screenshots of maps showing exit routes from the neighborhood. These searches were done late at night, while Caitlyn was in the next room. And investigators looked at two things to understand why Matthew did it: his personal relationships and his finances. His ex-girlfriend, someone he had reconnected with a few months before, June 2020, gave detectives messages in which Matthew said his marriage was just a formality he planned to deal with soon, so he could start a new life with her. A co-worker told a different side of the same story. She said Matthew rarely complained about Caitlyn personally. What bothered him was the legal cost of divorce. He told her that Caitlyn would never agree to sell their home in Hanahan. A legal separation meant losing the property and years of financial obligation. The co-worker also confirmed that Matthew had asked her what happens to shared real estate when a spouse dies unexpectedly. That question made the motive clear. With Caitlyn gone, Matthew could keep the house, skip the financial fallout of divorce, and move on with someone else. Investigators reconstructed what actually happened that night. Matthew waited until Caitlyn was asleep. He had already loaded the weapon. He went to the bedroom. Caitlyn never moved. She never had a chance to react. He then shot Bailey May where she lay. With no one left in the house, he walked through the rooms and tried to set the scene. He avoided touching the electronics and valuables he intended to keep. Then he went to the bathroom and used a knife, later found with his DNA on it, to cut his own arms and stomach. He stood in front of a mirror and controlled the depth of each cut to make sure he did not hit anything vital. Then he waited. He let time pass. He made sure it was close to daylight before he picked up the phone and called emergency services. By the time paramedics arrived, the blood on both Caitlyn and Bailey May had already started to dry. The trial began in November 2024 at Berkeley County Court. Prosecutor Alexander Myers built the case around the physical evidence and expert testimony. A forensic pathologist told the jury that Matthew's wounds were not consistent with a struggle. A ballistics expert explained that the angle of the bullets showed the shooter was standing still, firing at targets that were not moving. The shell casings next to Caitlyn and beside Bailey May matched the same weapon. The former girlfriend and the co-worker both testified. Between them, they covered the emotional motive and the financial one. The defense pointed to poor quality security camera footage from nearby streets, arguing it did not prove there were no intruders. The prosecution responded that the same footage also showed no one entering or leaving the house, which matched everything the forensic team had already established. During deliberations, the jury kept coming back to one central problem in Matthew's story. He claimed to have chased armed men through the house and out the front door. But officers found that door locked from the inside when they arrived. No broken windows, no other exit. The jury returned a verdict. Matthew Garrett Speck was found guilty on all counts: premeditated homicide, cruelty to an animal, and unlawful use of a firearm. Caitlyn's mother and sister sat quietly in the gallery and received the verdict in silence. At sentencing, Judge Dedra Jefferson gave Matthew Speck life in prison with no possibility of parole. An additional 10 years were added, making early release legally impossible under South Carolina law. The judge noted that Speck had not only committed the crime, but had tried to manipulate the justice system through a staged scene. Under state law, a person cannot profit from a crime they committed. The Eagle Landing home was transferred to Caitlyn's heirs. Matthew Speck is currently serving his sentence in a South Carolina correctional facility. The Eagle landing home was transferred to Caitlyn's heirs.